React Query is a very powerful library for managing server state in React application, and it makes it very, very easy to fetch, cache, synchronize, and update server data. Okay, so I created a server component that I injected on the path server, and if I come back to it, it's a totally empty component. The first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to import useQuery, and I'm going to import Axios. Okay, so I'm going to use Axios and useQuery together. What I want to do also just after that is to use some kind of fetch data function, but this time it's not going to be inside the component, it's going to be outside. Why? Because it's going to be rendered on the server. If I would like to render it on client, it would be totally different. We come back here, we can see that we got use client here on the top. Here we don't have it, so we are on the server side. So I'm just going to use here this fetch data that we got there. And remember here, what we want to do is basically here to not use HTTPS blah blah blah, but to use our API movies where we get the movies from. Okay, so far so good. Okay, what we want to do is basically to render the data that we're gonna get directly up here. So here it's going to be very different from what we did before. What I'm gonna do here is to actually call useQuery, and we can deconstruct useQuery into several elements, and this is where it's going to be interesting and useful. First, useQuery is going to return to us the data coming from this fetch data. But also, it's going to return to us the error automatically. It's going to catch the error for us and return it automatically. Another state really useful will be the isLoading. And we're going to use this loading to show the loader or something else while we wait for the data coming. Okay, or for the call to answer. So we got this useQuery, and what we want to do, we want to here put two arguments. Those two arguments are first the name of the query, because probably later we want to identify it to reuse it, and we need to pass the function that is going to fetch the data. You understood that it's going to be fetch data. So here I'm just going to put a string to start, and it's going to be fetch data, and then I'm going to pass here as a callback the fetch data function. It's going to handle everything for us. Which is really cool is that so far, okay, we've got here isLoading and data. So what I can do is basically to use my isLoading directly to render some loading state. So here what I can do is to say, just before returning here the dev component down there, the div component, sorry, we can just return here loading like this as a string. Basically this is bad. What I should do is to have a plain div, and it will be better. So I can remove that, and there we go. Okay, so it's going to handle it automatically. Otherwise, if there is an error, I can return a div error, okay, and close here the div, and I can show here, if I would like to, the error message. So basically it could be here error.message, and we should be good. Okay, so far we got here an error, and what's happening in here? We didn't set up the React query with a query client. So we need to configure the client in our main.jsx file. So let's come back here to main.jsx file, and down there we need to specify that we are going to use our query client provider. Okay, so what I can do here, I got an app wrapper, which basically is here. I could also do it inside my wrapper. But anyway, what I can do here is just to come back here and to put here query client provider. Here I already got it, okay? And I can wrap the whole application into it. This query client provider is waiting for a client, and this client will be a query client that we are going to import. Initiate just up there. So here I got my query client, which comes basically from the query client, sorry, directly from React query. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to come back here on the top, and we can see that I got query client imported and query client provider, sorry, and we got the query client down there. So I'm going to go down. I got my query client just here, and we can see that it's on the render part. I made a mistake, it's query client, and we need to trigger a new query client. Then we inject it, and then we should be good. We should have here our query client set up. So what I can do is to open my console and just console log the data, because remember at this point I will get the data, and we can see here that we got data.data.movies. So I can this time coming back here, just copying paste this, and I'm just going to go here, and I got data.map item, and remember here we can see that on my data I got data.movie, so I need to just do that. It's a bit tricky for this example, but there we go. We've got exactly the same example as we got with Axios on the client side, but now on the server side with React query working. Here is an example that is more aesthetic. We are actually deconstructing the data with data movies coming in here, because otherwise it looks a bit messy. And what we would like to prevent is that we've got some errors. So we already got this error up here that is doing the job. If there is an error, we stop there with this error message and we never arrive here. Let's say that for this example, we would like to post a new movie and mutate the actual array that we got on the API side, assuming we have a post endpoint. So I commented the previous code, and what we're going to do at first, we are going to just import Axios and use mutation and use query client. Previously, we used use query from React Query. This is to get the data and to cache it. We didn't show it, but there's still the option to do it. You can check it out. But here what I want to do is to have some kind of button that is going to mutate actually my state. So let's say that I'm going to have a button and add a new movie. Okay. And when I click on this action, I would like to post to my API and get a new movie in the list. So what I would need to do here is to create a mutation. This mutation here will be actually the function that is going to do the operation on the server side. Mutation is going to use, of course, the use mutation function that we have up here. And what it's going to do is going to receive the new movie, okay, the new movie object. And this is where we are going to post here. So we are going to use Axios post, and we are going to post on https://codewithg.com/API/movies. Or if you want to use again the Axios instance coming from the Axios file we created before, it's already possible. It's still possible. So we just need /movies. There we go. So once we've got this, I'm going to zoom a little bit for you to see here. Once we've got our mutation ready, we can do the operation. Just after this post that we got there, we need to post, of course, the new item. So the new movie, sorry. So we got the new movie, which is here, and we got to pass it to our Axios instance just inside the function Axios. Of course, we need to pass the new movie as a body. Okay, so what I can do down there is directly to use the onClick event handler coming from where? Coming from React, and by extension already available in every HTML file through JavaScript. So I'm going to use mutation mutate, and I need the function mutate from this use mutation instance, which is here under mutation. And here I need to pass the object, which would be basically a new movie. So we can say title Star Wars here, and there we go. This is the only thing I need to do this server action. I can of course pass another object after our function here. We can pass a new object to specify some stuff that I want to do once the operation is done. So for example, what I can use here is to say on mutate here, I want to do some operation. While I mutate, I want to do something. Or while once the operation is done, unsettled, I could use my query client to do something, to do some operation that I would like to do at this point. So for example, what I could do here on use query client, and this use query client, you understood it's coming from here, is the query client that we got there on main.jsx. what I could do is to invalidate any other query. And this query would have a name, for instance, a query movies or movies query. Okay, I could do something like this if I want to. So just to keep it simple, I'm going to keep that. And that's it. That's how I can mutate. That's how I can just send some data. What I need to do is to use mutation from React Query, use an Axios instance or Axios basically. Here I got my Axios instance. And then I would push here this movie. And when I got it, I could display it again on a list. Okay, if we merge use query with use mutation, here is the result. So we've got our list here, and we've got the button add a new movie. I added some style to it. And we've got here our query client that is initiated, our use query, and our use mutation function. Okay? So at first, exactly like previously, we fetch here with the function fetch data, we fetch the data coming from directly from the endpoint. And we've got our use mutation, and here we use on success or unsettled our query client to invalidate the query fetch data. What does it do? It tells the query actually fetch data to refetch again the data to be refreshed. Okay, so here we've got a loading state, an error, and when we got the data, we deconstruct the data with movies. Down there, we are pushing one movie, Star Wars, directly here to the database. So it assumes that you got already an endpoint post where you can post actually new movies, and it's going to be in the array. So we got here use query, use mutation. There we go. So when I arrive on the app, I got a list of movies. Okay, and when I click on add new movie, it's supposed to push this movie down there on the on-click event handler, mutation, mutate, bam. Okay, so I'm going to click on add a new movie, and immediately we've got here Star Wars that has been added to the list. So if I update again, Star Wars here is on the array, and if I click again, it's going to add again Star Wars, because here I don't look for the name and stuff, so we can see it coming. So we can see here we are on a server component. I'm just going to remove all of that so you can have the whole example. We are mixing React Query and Axios to trigger some action on the server side, and we can add some new movies, etc., to our array, which is basically on my website, which is here saved on the Axios instance. So I'm not saving this data. This is just an array that will be reset every time I update my website, but you can still use it to try to send data using React Query.